I've learned a lot in my time, but I had to be willing to keep an open mind. And like I said earlier, it did not take one try. I had to try, 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 and then try again. Um, and honestly, as long as you're trying, there's no shame in that at all.
Yeah.
And I quite sincerely mean that. And the sooner you can extend yourself a little bit of grace and remember all of the things that you've keyword survived and keep the mission in mind, what your end goal is, what are you trying to achieve, what are you trying to reach. Don't so much worry about getting to the top of the mountain, just worry about your next step, that one step, and rinse and repeat that as much as you have to. But also, like, and this is the most important thing, and I say this because we're our own worst critics, our own worst enemies. We get in the way of ourselves a lot because often we have a higher expectation of ourselves and we feel like we let ourselves down. But you know what? You're fucking human. So allow yourself to fuck up because it's going to happen. And the more you try to force it to never happen, the harder it's going to be for you to progress. Step number one for me and my experience was learning how to forgive myself on a lot of stupid shit that I've done. And, you know, it took a lot of honest, hard conversations with just myself in a mirror. And it sounds psychopathic, maybe, but there's a reason for it. Everybody has their inner beast, I call it. I used to be terrified of mine because I didn't know what I was capable of. I didn't know that beast. I was always taught to be passive, I guess. But like, just as an analogy, since training martial arts, understanding everything I've been through, I've got to nurture that beast, and that beast has helped me when I've needed it. And not just me, but like my family, as an example. There's nothing wrong with having an internal beast inside. It's a part of who you are. And the more you try to suppress that beast, the more it's going to eat you away because you're trying to turn a part of yourself off. And you can use it to your strength. And that's what I've been doing recently with jiu-jitsu, the army, and blah, 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 and everything that I've talked about. It's getting to know that beast, know how that beast works, not allowing that beast to take over, and getting out of your head. I've made more problems for myself by staying in that dark dwelling in my head than not. So Cowboy, if you're hearing this, homie, just know you are not alone. There are folks that are happy to listen because I don't think I would be where I'm at if it wasn't first and foremost my number one life partner, my wife. Try not to get emotional, but it's a serious thing. Like, if I didn't have that life partner to go through it all with me and to extend me grace to me, to allow me the room to grow as an individual and be patient and understanding of it, I would never have addressed it to begin with. There's also Native Raider, like all of the communities. Everybody is generally speaking, people want to see you succeed. And that's why everybody's so willing to help, because they have their own personal internal hell and they know what it's like. They know what it's like to live in that place by themselves and not have anybody that they keyword trust. I mean, you know, external factors, people that consider themselves family know the systems in place and they'll tell you to go speak to a therapist. And you know what? There are case scenarios where the proper therapist will definitely help, but it is a lot of effort. And if I can get therapy just from talking to a handful of selected people that I genuinely trust, that I know it's a safe space to talk, let out everything quite transparently, so that way I'm actually addressing my issues. That has taken me a long way. Just to start acknowledging the areas that I have problems with. And it's not to say that you have to overwhelm yourself and, you know, have the entire fucking encyclopedia of your personal problems smack you in the face. Just start with page one step at a time. And gradually, over time, things will become easier. You'll be able to make bigger decisions that will better yourself. And I hate the saying when I'm in that space, but it does get better. I fucking hate that saying, but if you're willing to put in the work, it does get better. The best analogy that I could give in terms of my mental illness, take a wine glass, fill it with wine. The wine is a mental illness and it's full to the brim. When you start to take care of yourself, put it underneath a tap and turn on the water, even if it's just a crack. Over time, the wine will be displaced and the stain will be removed, and you will be able to see clearly once again. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of internal acknowledgement, a lot of tears, and being honest with particular people you trust so that you have a what's the word I'm looking for? An accountability system. And that's why trust is important, because the people who hold you accountable need to do so from a place of love and not from a place of, well, I'm just going to use their pain to better myself, to make myself look good. Because you know what? If you're that person out there, fuck you. You selfish piece of shit. Seriously. Taking advantage of somebody who's going through something is probably the absolute most lowest thing that you could possibly do for yourself. But again, as a person that's going through this, you'll know that. Cowboy, you know you can always reach out to me, homie. I will never judge you. You will always have an open floor and a safe space to speak your mind so that you can rediscover yourself and love yourself again. I understand what you're going through, albeit I've had a different experience, but pain is pain, and I get it. There are people that love you, I'm sure, both in your family, in real life, but also here as well, that is detached from your physical situation, unbiased. So please, if you need somebody, find the courage. We got you. Until such a time that you're ready, we're going to be your prayer warriors, dude. We're going to be looking out for you. And we wish you nothing but the best. You're going to get through this, and we love you, homie. That's my message to Dizzy. And I hope I made him fucking cry.
Well, guys, with that being said, on to your regularly scheduled intro. Welcome to the Astronaut Arcade Podcast, where your space hosts, Andromeda, Cowboy, Ranger, and Native Raider share stories, tips, and the latest information on anything video game related. Today, I'm here with the aforementioned SweatySpooks, and we're going to be talking a little bit of a finer detail comparison between Pokemon and Palworld. Now, without further ado, let's begin the countdown to launch.
3, 2, 1, let's go! A little soundbite for you.
If I knew how to do sound bites, I would make
You just edit it. That's all I do.
Well, everybody,
editing.
We're here for another week. As you have clearly heard in a very lengthy section of the beginning of this podcast, we have SweatySpooks here, and we're here to talk some video games.
Sweaty? God, I can't stand that guy.
Oh, man. Well, I guess you better leave.
He really needs to find some antiperspirant. You know that? Like, it's scary. But wait, Sweaty. Okay, yeah, I see what you did there. Dad joke's so funny. What a fucking loser. So stupid.
Well, Sweaty, what's new in video games for you in the gaming sphere?
Hey. Lots is new in the video game sphere. Well, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 28 games installed on just my PC. That's not including any consoles or handhelds, or, I have the retro handheld that looks like a Game Boy that plays ROMs. So I have my entire childhood Pokemon collection on that thing, which is amazing, may I add. My wife bought me Pokemon Violet for my Switch, the most recent one, because I haven't played it yet. So I can officially say that I have the entire Pokemon franchise collection, with the exception of Pokemon Go, because that's just not my thing. Pokemon Snap, all those offshoot Pokemon games, they're just not my thing. They're really not. I have to be able to select a starter, go on an adventure, find out the mechanics, and get some fucking shiny Pokemon. That's what I do. And that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. As for me, not a whole lot new. It's mostly been Rivals and Palworld.
Mm-hmm.
I've been toying around with a few other games. I do play Fortnite with Beef and his son, fairly well, inconsistently now because I don't have as much time. But it's whenever Beef says, "Hey, my kid's been asking if you can play Fortnite with us. You good?" I'll usually find the time to play with him at some point that week.
Hell yeah, dude.
But housekeeping, Andro is still working her way into getting back to being able to do a handful of episodes with us. You guys heard Sweaty's spiel to Cowboy, and so you guys know he's not here today, dealing with being a dad and getting healthy.
And you know what? Good on him. That is absolutely more important than being here with us shitheads. So nothing but respect.
So that's it for housekeeping, though. We have SweatySpooks for the first time on this podcast.
Hey, probably the last because he's going to get kicked.
Not by me. But that means we have a guest interview to do. So, Mr. Sweaty, not underscore Spooks. I really wish there was an underscore there because I'd have made just, a great middle name. Who are you?
Fucking loser. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Aralowin Ranger. It's not actually his birthday, folks. This is an inside joke that I would wish him a happy birthday on every single day that we encounter, and it's not actually his birthday. And on his actual birthday, I'll make a point to say nothing. But to answer your question, who am I? I am your resident Canadian boy. Living in the 51st state. It's pretty wonderful. You guys living in the 11th province. It's pretty fantastic. It's the way we roll around here. I living on the East Coast, province called Prince Edward Island. For my American friends, Eastern Standard Time, but you don't know Atlantic Standard, which is 1 hour ahead of Eastern. Hey, I am that guy. Hell yeah. But who am I? I'm 32 years old. I'm a dad to a little girl. She's 6 years old. Full-time working. I've been engaged to my fiance for 6 years now. Money's a bitch. I'll say that. That's why we haven't finished the deed, but we're working on that. Working towards. Hello. Okay, good. It's working. Sorry. From time to time, my USB ports seem to reset on their own. I don't know why, but anyways, moving on. Just I'm a normal guy. That's it. I have, shall I say, nerd culture interests. I deep dive into the things that I really like because I think I have some form of undiagnosed ADHD, and I have to be a professional about the one thing and know everything about that one thing that I've over obsessed about in the moment that I'm over obsessing about it. And I'm pretty sure that I have some autism as well. I think that's present. My daughter is confirmed to have it. I know her mother didn't get it. No, doesn't have it. So I'm pretty sure that comes from me. In case you can't tell from the speed of which I speak and, all over the place. So forgive me, but this is who I am. I come as I am. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I can't help you there. Maybe change the episode.
As far from what I understand of mental disorders, I guess is how I want to say that. Sounds bad. I don't mean it bad.
It is what it is.
ADHD is where you get the flitting around from thing to thing and not being able to focus super great on any one topic. But then when you hyper fixate on something, I think that's where your autism takes over and you laser and go from all the way to the, end of the tunnel and go all the way back through to make sure you understood it. And then you say, okay, now we can talk about it.
Yep, 100%. That is entirely me in a nutshell. Although, whenever I dance around from topic to topic to topic to topic, it's usually because I'm trying to build up to a grand scenario of explanations of some sort, so it all builds on each other, and I'm actually able to mentally keep track of it all and converse with more than one person at the same time. So I think there's something wrong with me, but I use it as a strength and I really enjoy it actually. Now that I've kind of accepted that's a part of who I am and that's the part of the fabric that makes me me. Um, and I just kind of lean into it now, it's a lot more fun to do it that way than
Well,
to just kind
I
of
love
beat
who you
yourself up.
are.
Oh, you're so sweet. Look at you.
Gotta touch my chest and my heart region.
Yes, the burly chest of our Rolowin. Oh, yeah.
Well, what got you into gaming?
Boredom.
There you go.
Yeah, no, literally, take it back to the 90s, a time before internet, whenever Nintendo was the big thing. And if you were a cool kid on the block, you had yourself a Game Boy. Oh, yes, the old Game Boy. You didn't need internet, you just needed the cartridge. You slap it in there and away you go. And your parents would say, put that shit away. It's not good for you. And you're staying up all night. And you get in trouble over it all the time. And of course, you wait till 2 a.m, wake up, sneak into your parents' room to steal it back, play it for a couple hours before school, put it back, and wonder why you're tired all day. Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's pretty much it.
I think that's my favorite answer so far because a lot of people have like a story, right? Like the first
Yeah.
game I played was with my dad, and he was really into it, and like that's how they got it. And you're just like, nah, I was bored. I picked it up because everybody else
Yep.
was doing it.
Pretty much. Yep. It all started with, well, okay. Sorry, let me backtrack here. There's a particular franchise where my love for gaming began, but there's a difference between being dedicated and being exposed. So the exposure, I would be like 2, maybe 3 years old. And my mom had a Sega Genesis. She had this black cartridge and the top used to flip up and it was Sonic and Knuckles cartridge. So I put that into the Genesis and then I would take my Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with Tails and put that on the top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, original DLC. So yeah, that's where it started. But the interest started with Pokemon Red way back in the day.
Nice. Well, what I think I know the answer. And just especially for you, I'm gonna say you can use a series. What is your favorite game of all time?
That's gonna be Pokemon because of childhood to present day. It has been my longest standing franchise that I still to this day love. Um, and don't get me wrong, there are definitely other titles that are definitely way up there. But if I had to pick a singular, break it down to just one, it's gonna be Pokemon every time, all day, every day.
Sames, bro. Same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've in the times I've talked to you about Pokemon and the things that you do and the things that you know, like the knowledge you have, it astounds me that because I think we're probably close to the same age. I think you're what, 31?
92 baby, 32.
32? Yeah. So I'm 29. So we're like really close to the same age.
Mm-hmm.
I have never dived into the stuff that we're kind of going to talk about today.
Like
And
egg
like,
mechanics and how
yeah,
you can breed different
never,
Pokemon that aren't the same together, and how you can get a foreign Ditto to increase your chances for yeah, we'll get
yeah,
into that, folks. Stay tuned.
yeah. I've never actually looked into most of that. The only thing I mildly looked into was when I was trying to shiny hunt. And I was like, oh, okay, so everybody says you need a foreign Ditto. And they said you need a whole bunch of other stuff too, but that's how far I got was the foreign Ditto. And I got one. And I was like, all right, cool.
I thank
I
my
didn't.
autism for this knowledge that I've acquired.
Yeah.
Facts.
Now, for my favorite guest interview question, what is your least favorite game that you will still play? So when you pick up this game, you think to yourself, I should go touch grass instead, but you still sit there and you play it.
That's gonna be a tough question because all the games that I play, I generally like. Um, you know what? I'm gonna ask my wife if anything stands out right quick. So you know what? We're gonna use a lifeline. We're gonna call for help, Miss Wifey Poo. The question is, what is my least favorite game that I'll still play? I know, right? That's a tough one. Yeah, she's just as confused as I am. Okay, hold on. Yep. Lifeline's thinking. Hang in there, folks. Well, that's what I mean. Most of the games I play, I generally like. Mhm. Yeah, I actually like that game, so that I can't say it's my least favorite. I don't know how to answer that. You know what? Least favorite game that I will still play from time to time. I'm gonna say Yu-Gi-Oh because there's a free Yu-Gi-Oh game. Wife, she agrees.
Duel Links.
Yeah. That's it. I will play that from time to time, just to kind of scratch the itch. But like, I'm like, oh shit, why am I even playing this? Yep, I would say that's probably it.
Well, so the reason this
Now,
question morphed into that is because I was asking people just what is your least favorite game? And people would say, "Oh, I played this game one time, I never touched it again." They have no information on it. They never developed any kind of attachment to it ever. It was just I played it, I hated it, it's gone. But it's a lot harder to think about what is the last game on your roster that you still will play, but it's just I kind of would rather
oh
just do
wait,
something else.
okay, yep. I thought of a different title that I would say for sure, but I make an active effort to avoid playing the game because I just do not care for it at all. And it might be a little controversial, I know that it's got a soft spot for people out there, and I'm very cognitive of that, and I respect it as well. It's your money, play what you want to play, absolutely. Um, I want to say it's Metal Gear Solid with Snake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the boxes and like this is old school, folks. So if you're thinking of the newer titles, like no idea, but like that game used to get on my nerves. I would sooner go play Battletoads and get frustrated at that game, but still enjoy it than to go play Metal Gear Solid. I don't know what it was about it. It just, for some reason, it did not agree with the fabric of who I am.
Yeah. And it's like, and it, I love this question because
Mega Man. That is definitely even worse than Metal Gear. Mega Man, like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Again, controversial. I know other people like it, and that's cool. I respect it. I'm there for it. But when it comes to me, I am not going to play that game by myself. No. Hell no.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my game because I don't think I've ever actually answered that question before. Oh, there it is. Okay. So for me, it's Warframe.
Okay. Yep.
Like if
Now,
I
I'm
had
going to twist your own question on you here in a minute. Please continue.
okay. So like if I had a group of friends, I was like, "Hey, we're really getting into Warframe. We want you to play with us." I have it downloaded. It is installed. It is up to date. I would hop in and play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it by myself for a while, hoping to catch it, right? To catch that thing that's like this draws me in. I think I played it for like 6 or 7 hours or something like that. I never like straight. Like I just on a Saturday, 6 or 7 hours straight. Never clicked. Like I turned it off that day. I was like, yeah, I'm not playing this tomorrow.
So we talked about your least favorite game. Now, Relevant, I'm going to ask you this, and then I'll answer it as well. What is your least favorite genre of game?
Oh, that is a really hard one. My instant knee jerk is horror.
Okay, that's fair. Yep.
But it's not entirely true because I do enjoy horror games. I have to be in the surroundings for it.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
if it is, and it's not even really a horror game, but when we first played, crap, what's the game with the little girl and the old man and the screamers?
It sounds like Jail Time. I'm not sure.
The girl had the cure to this disease, and the guy, her name was Ellie, and the guy was like,
the name sounds familiar, but I'm not certain.
It's such a big game. Oh, this is gonna
like
drive me crazy.
I've had that name brought up, and like I know what game you're talking about. I just can't think of the title of it either.
Oh no, this is gonna drive me crazy. I guarantee you somebody is listening to this podcast right now.
They're screaming at us right now.
The title.
I'm sorry, Andromeda. Don't hurt me.
There was a 2. There was a second game. The old man had died in the first game. I want to say it's a sort of a zombie game.
Last of Us?
Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
Thank you.
10 points of sweaty.
So the first time me and my friends ever played through Last of Us, we did it, couch co-op style, right? So you play with whenever somebody dies, you pass the controller. Old school. When we were kids, that's how we played single player games. It's like, oh, I'm playing. I died. Here you go.
Tracking.
That's the first time we ever played it. But we played it with all of the lights off in the house, and we only ever started playing it at 10 p.m. And we turned the volume all the way up, and so we're just sitting there, maybe 5 feet from the TV screen, and we had like a big old 70-inch TV. So we're sitting there, all of us 5 feet away from the 70-inch TV, and all of a sudden you hear the clicks. And it's just like, I feel like I am in this position right now, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and I don't like playing horror games like that. Now, if it's broad daylight or I have all the lights on in my room, I'm perfectly fine.
Hell yeah. I would say for me, Sims, like simulators, like a farming sim, something fucking. I don't want to insult it because I know that people do like these games, but whenever I insult a game, please understand I'm not insulting anybody out there that does like these games, but I find it's a waste of fucking time.
If I
I'd
wanted to
rather grow
play
actual
farming, yeah,
tomatoes than doing it in a game.
because then you can taste the benefits of what you worked for.
Oh, and then you get cooking in the kitchen and you're just like, let my boy cook. Let's
Yeah.
go. And then when you're doing a video game of it, it's just like, man, I can't smell shit. This is bullshit.
Have you ever played Stardew Valley?
I do like that game, yes.
Because I think
Um,
that qualifies as a farming simulator.
it does. However, it's not strictly a farming simulator. There are other
Correct.
things you can do that have RPG elements, which are akin to a different franchise that's one of my favorites, which is also controversial to the simulator analogy here of Rune Factory.
Mm,
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it is definitely one of my favorite titles, but less because of the simming factors and more on the RPG factors. Because you get a sword, you can go kill things, you get loot from killing said monsters, and then there's different tiers of it, and you get to craft your armor. You level up, and things like that. You get powers. So the RPG aspect is really what kind of got me with those particular titles. But if you're just going to give me straight up farming simulator, fuck off.
yeah. Um, have you played? It is technically a simulator. Have you played? Crap.
No, I
Satisfactory.
haven't played crap. Satisfactory. I've watched people play it, but it's not something that I would be interested in. Now, I would watch it if it's a streamer that I like because I'm there for the person less than I am the game. But I like watching how other people tick. I like watching how other people approach problem solving. So I can't say that I hate watching anybody play it because it offers a different experience and a
Mhm.
little bit of an insight to the framework of somebody else's mind. Again, problem solving and how people approach that. So yeah, but the game itself, uh, not for me.
If I ever play with Beef, the next time I'm gonna stream it, and then I'm gonna tag you in it, so that
Mhm.
you can come watch. And I'm gonna jump into his personal world for just 10 minutes because that's all I can stand of it.
Yeah.
It shows you like you said, in games like that where there's lines and you have to problem solve and like there's efficiency ratings and things like that, you can really see the way a person's brain works.
Right.
Beef's brain is a
Like
noodle
Peepee
mess.
Pipe is an example. Although the type of stuff that she plays isn't my personal interest, I'm fascinated
Oh
with the
yeah.
type of work that she comes out with. Like it blows my mind. So Peepee Pipe, if you're out there and you hear this, yeah, sure, it might not be my game, but I really enjoy your work and how you approach that sort of environment. So
Yeah.
kudos to Peepee Pipe.
And Beef's brain is a noodle mess.
Yes, it is. It's
Dude,
like if you took a pot of spaghetti and just threw it at the wall, and wherever it lands, that's beef. But we love them.
yes. And his satisfactory save exemplifies that because I went in there to play with him because I got him all hyped up on the game and I was like, I'm gonna play with you, I want to play with you. All right, I've got time to play with you. Let's play. And I hopped in there to his world. I was like, all right, bro, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna get all this stuff done. And I went in and I looked and I was like, where is this item? He was like, what do you mean? I was like, I mean, you have 6 different conveyors all carrying the same item from somewhere that I can't see. Where
Yeah.
is it stored? Yeah, it
And
is
I
just
find that
ugh.
a person with a creative mind as well is just messy in general. But to
Yeah,
them, it's an organized mess. They know where everything is, but to somebody else who's maybe not of the same mind frame, it just looks like fucking chaos.
yes, and that is exactly what it is. Is his he knew where everything was, and he artistically had it where he felt it needed to be. But
Mhm.
he also like he don't play no shit, right? So like I need this thing over here right now, direct line. If I gotta go over something, I'm going over it. If I got to go through something, I'm going through it. Like whatever has to happen right now.
Yep.
But the thing is that he remembers that. He remembers that feeling of I need this now. So he always remembers where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that. I have to have organized everything. Rabbit hole, off topic, back to Sweaty. And I'm pretty sure most people know the answer to this final question because I've mentioned it before. Do you stream? And for how long have you streamed? And what got you started?
Well, I think you answered the first question yourself. I was gonna play. No, I don't stream. I was gonna lean into it, but that's okay. We'll go with
You've also been our streamer of the week at least twice. So
appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, I stream. How long? I would fuck. Is it
it's
really
been
been
longer than your podcasting career.
It's like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I never thought about that before. Because it feels like just yesterday when I started. I remember starting with a shitty condenser mic that I got for free. And the problem with that condenser mic, it picks up the entire room, and that's what it's supposed to do. So it's not it wasn't a problem with me. It wasn't a problem with the equipment. It was doing what it was supposed to do, but that's where I started.
Yeah.
And you deal with what you have. So there was that, and I had a shitty laptop. And it was really expensive at the time, but it's super shitty laptop. I think it just shit the bed not too long ago, honestly. Then I got a pre-built PC, spent more than I was comfortable with. Dell, and it was advertised to be upgradable. I didn't really know much about the hardware aspect of things, although I did have some college experience with it, but like I didn't stay long enough to really absorb the information and to know the difference between stuff, not to mention how quickly technology changes.
Mhm.
And I probably went to college maybe like 10 years prior to that point or longer. So I had to relearn it all over again. But the good news was I had the toolkit in order to teach myself on the particulars. But the problem was with this pre-built PC, it was advertised to be upgradable up to an i9 Intel. That's what we're talking about here. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. And so I got it. But after the fact, a couple years down the road, well, they stopped making the computer. And that was a problem because when they stopped making the computer, they stopped making the parts.
Yeah.
And that was a problem because it was a proprietary parts to you see where I'm going with this. I was big sad. And very quickly that PC became outdated with, shall I say, the most recent games. I probably had like maybe a PlayStation 4 equivalent of a PC. So whenever the PlayStation 5 dropped, and there's more pixels in that one eyelash than there was in the entire game that you were just playing. Yeah, it became difficult to keep up. But I dealt with what I had, and I dove into Destiny 2. Shut up, Coderson. You're a dead game. Love you, buddy. Smoochy boochies. But essentially, I really enjoyed the PvP aspect. And it was very different from any other PvP game like Call of Duty that we had ever experienced because it had RPG elements, like a build. You could lean into a particular power fantasy, and there was a build to counter that build. So it's no wonder why so many people get upset and confused as to why they can't just put on a gun and go play Destiny, because that's just not how the game's built. So again, hey, ADHD, autism. Yeah, I dove hard into it. And the reason the reason I started the podcast as being the founder was because I was on a skill improvement journey. Through Destiny, I would learn things such as, skills that translate to other games like map awareness, game sense, comms, working with a team. And a lot of that became a lot more compacted when I onboarded Native Raider. And I really appreciated that he comes from a military experience and he was able to translate the mentality of that type of teamwork into the game. And we interviewed a lot of people. And it's, of course, like I said, it started with Destiny. So we were interviewing folks from the Destiny PvP community and just kind of talking about the nuances and the niches and the specialties that you could lean into. There was a lot of private matches, which is where the first part of my name comes from. Sweaty is a term deriving from sweats, which meant private matches. Um, just to answer the second part of that, spooky was derived from a Halloween adjective. I'm huge, love Halloween. I have an entire Jack Skellington tattoo sleeve now. But unbeknownst to me at the time, being Canadian and at the time unfamiliar with American history, it was quickly brought to my attention what that part of my name translated to for other folks. But I wasn't going to change for anybody. And that wasn't the direction that I was coming from. And if that's the direction you accused me of in, that was your problem and not mine. So, fuck off. End of the story. But yeah, coming back to the main topic, the podcast is where I left off at. See what I did there? I can offshoot and come back. Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, love it. Whenever me and Native started, it was really just about improvement. And eventually we would onboard Coderson because, well, Native is a very special person to me. And I'm not just saying that because he's my co host, I mean, offline as well. Um, we all know that he's a veteran. And veterans, much like myself at the time, they go through shit. And when you're a person that's going through shit, having somebody that can give you a safe space to be yourself and to give you legitimate advice, even if you don't want to hear it, but you need to, that's what Native was for me. Um, and I will forever love him like my own family because of that. He's seen me go through a lot of dark shit, and he was my guy, and he still is. And we help each other out, and that's just the way it's been ever since. And I would not be the person that I am today if it wasn't for Native. It might sound like a big love story and touchy feely, but
Because it
like I
is.
said, I come as I am, and if you don't like it, and find a different episode. But Native is my guy, and I will always give him his flowers because he deserves it. And he's too hard on himself, in my opinion. That's because he has high expectations of himself, certainly being a military personnel. Um, but that's what he's got me for, it's a two-way relationship. And same thing with Coderson. We did some fundraising, a fundraising event, a charity event through a nonprofit organization called Stack Up, which is a charity that benefits not just American veterans, but allies, which includes Canada. So I felt really good about this, and I felt like I made an impact, and I sure did because it was Veterans Day, or as the Canadians call it, Remembrance Day, that we did this. And at the end of it, he pulled me aside and he said, Sweat, uh, Veterans Day is usually pretty hard on veterans, having to shake everybody's fucking hands and listen to the thank you for your service all the time. And it's not that they don't appreciate that, but whenever you hear it over and over and over again for fucking 16 hours straight in a day, and really all you can think about is the people that you've lost, that you've loved, it's a really hard day. So when we did that charity event, it was able to pull him out of his feels a little bit and participate in something, keep him busy, something that provided meaning for him, something that he cared about. And at the end of the day, he felt fulfilled for it. And to provide that for my guy, it impacted me. And I think that was a turning point where I was like, I want to keep doing this. There's other people out there. And through those decisions, we would meet Coderson. Most recently, Seth Daddy Fresh. And, um, you know, this is just my opinion, and people might disagree with it, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. But I feel like too often, um, our veterans are misunderstood because they just see the anger. And I'm the kind of person that understands that anger is a tool, it's a shield. Well, what do you mean, Sweaty? Anger hides hurt, and hurt will lead you to the root cause. And a lot of the times when we're not ready, we just rely on our anger to tell people to fuck off because we're not ready. And that's okay. Everybody has a different process when it comes to grief. Sorry, we're turning this episode to a fucking massive mental health related episode. It's not my intention here, but it comes back to the main part, right? Everybody's going through their own shit. Everybody's suffering somehow. And it's not until we extend a bit of grace, a little bit of love and understanding that an individual can release those bonds and take a look around for themselves. So through that experience, I felt fulfilled with that, and now I'm currently in processing for my own application to join the military, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question. Maybe it's a little long-winded because I'm really, really bad at that.
I'm pretty sure you answered the question. You do stream.
Yep.
You've streamed for 6 years, and you got started, when you started playing Destiny 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Si, senor.
Yeah. Honestly, Destiny 2 is dangerously close to becoming my least favorite game that I'll still play. It is dangerously close.
You know what? I don't blame you, dude. I have coming up to 6,000 hours in the game.
Yeah.
So I genuinely enjoy it. I had to earn that though. It's an acquired taste, just like scotch
Well, I
or
played it.
anything else, really.
I played it for years. Like, I played it from D1 beta all the way through Lightfall,
Mm.
nonstop. Like, I was a no lifer in that game for a long time. Like, I dabbled in other games every once in a while, like short breaks.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it would like be maybe a month, and then the next big event would come out in Destiny, or it would be announced. The big one for us was always the Valentine's Day event because
FOMO.
duos.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Crimson Days.
Yep. So
Yep.
me and my best friend at the time, um, we were duo partners, and so whenever it would always be like right after Christmas, we would take a break and be like, "Yeah, we're kind of done for now." Crimson Days would launch, and we'd be like, "All right, bro, Crimson Days, let's go, let's get back to it," and then just keep going. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of love for the game, which is why it hasn't hit the bottom of that list.
Right.
It's really close with how it's gone in the last few years. Not saying it's inherently a bad game, just maybe poorly managed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get you.
Well, Pokemon and Palworld together, not against each other, but together to compare
Hmm.
and discuss. Let's start with what are IVs and how are they distributed in the game?
Right. A little precursor for the folks listening who may not be entirely familiar. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're bringing two subject matter experts together to discuss the parallels and the differences. I, of course, being the Pokemon expert in loose quotes in this case, with Aralowin being the subject matter expert when it comes to Palworld.
Again, loosely, the word expert is
Exactly.
loose.
So IVs, what is IV? Well, I'm going to speak from the Pokemon franchise perspective, but in terms of IVs, this is a parallel in Palworld, but IVs are an abbreviation which stands for individual values, which are hidden stats that determine the potential of a Pokemon in various attributes. Um, excuse me, these values influence how strong a Pokemon can become in terms of attack, defense, speed, special attack, special defense, and HB, abbreviation for hit points. So IVs are unique to each Pokemon and essentially are a set of genetic markers that define its growth potentials. Um, so I kind of got a little bit of help from Chat GBT here just to kind of break it down in a way that I can explain it. I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'm just kind of using it as a guide to help me explain it to the listener who may not understand. So, what are IVs essentially? Well, as we discussed earlier, they're numerical values ranging from 0 to 31 for each of the Pokemon stats, like attack, defense, et cetera, that we talked about. The higher the IV, the stronger the Pokemon will be in that particular stat when it reaches level 100. And a Pokemon's overall potential is heavily determined by its IVs. And no two Pokemon of the same species will have the exact same IVs. So that's important to remember. How do the IVs affect the stats? Well, IVs are essentially the genetic makeup that dictates how high a Pokemon can train its stats. So, as an example, a Pokemon with a high attack value, so 30 or 31, will have a higher attack stat at level 100 compared to a Pokemon with a low attack IV value. HP IVs are unique because the stat is calculated using a formula that factors in both the Pokemon's HP IV and its species. But like other stats, a higher IV yields a stronger stat. So IV range Each stat has the potential, like we mentioned earlier, go from 0 to 31, and we also discussed how that affects stats. What's a perfect IV? Well, we know that's going to be a base value of 31, and we know that's going to be the absolute best maximum stat that you could possibly yield from that Pokemon. Now, there is a way to inherit IVs through the breeding mechanic. So the IVs of the offspring they're partly determined by, well, the IVs of the parents, obviously, but also using items like the Destiny Knot, which can help pass down more IVs from the parents. And that's going to be one of the key ingredients when it comes to something that is referred to as the Masuda method. There is now in-game mechanics that allow you to check IVs in terms of Pokemon, where that never used to be the case. You used to have to put in a lot of effort to figure out what that value really was and what it meant. Different IVs have different effects in battle. Now, there's going to be a question of, well, what's the difference between an IV, right? We've talked heavily so far about this, but what's the difference between an IV versus an EV? So we know IV is individual values. EV stands for effort values. Now, IVs are
Pokemon.
The abbreviation, Raluin.
Right.
IVs are fixed, and they cannot be changed except through breeding or special methods like bottle caps, a mechanic that was introduced in the later titles, later generations. On the other hand, effort values, or EVs, or all of them, can be earned and influenced by actions like battling specific wild Pokemon or using items like vitamins. So specific wild Pokemon, what does that mean? Well, a Wingull, for example, he's just looks like a seagull. He's a water-based Pokemon. The EV value that he outputs when you defeat him is a speed EV. So if you fight nothing but Wingulls until you max out your effort values, you will maximize your speed potential. There's also other things such as bottle caps and hyper training. So in Pokemon Sun and Moon, when that was released and onward, players can use bottle caps to perform hyper training, which artificially raises a Pokemon's IVs to a perfect level of 31 for a specific stat. It can make it easier for players to optimize their Pokemon without needing perfect individual values from birth. So that is the entire explanation of the mechanics that we were looking for. Now, Araluin, are you able to draw parallels from that, and how does it differ in Palworld?
Yeah. So in Palworld, there is, as far as I'm aware, there is no such thing as EVs or effort values. That does not exist. As far as I'm aware, nobody has come out saying that they've discovered this yet. The company has not put anything out about like, hey, you guys haven't noticed, but this is something that we've had in the game. So as far as I am aware, they don't exist. However, IVs do. And I believe in Palworld, I don't know if they're individual values or if they're invisible values, because they're not invisible anymore.
If I had to pick one, I would say more akin to the spirit of what an individual value is.
Yeah, I would agree. However, whereas in Pokemon, you have one for every single possible stat that you have for your Pokemon. In Palworld, there is only 3, versus I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 different stats that could potentially receive a bonus from IVs. There's only 3. One of those IVs is attack, one is defense, and one is health, I believe. Do you know, Sweaty? I'm trying to picture the image.
I really
and know what
don't.
the last one is.
I really don't know when it comes to Palworld. A lot of the times when it comes to those things, I'm pulling and drawing from the Pokemon mechanics and trying to draw parallels. Yeah, that's the best way I could explain it.
Okay. So it's max health, attack, and defense. Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, the way these work is there's a stat value for 0 to 100 in Palworld, and there's those 3 stats, and it works virtually identical to the Pokemon system of the better this number, the higher that number will go for your specific PAL. And
Right.
again, based upon which species of PAL you have, if you have a PAL that naturally has a high health pool, they're going to have more to gain than a PAL that has a naturally low health pool. And vice versa for attack and defense and so forth, so on. Getting PALs with perfect IVs, from my understanding, is a lot simpler and possibly even easier than it is in Pokemon.
Right.
For a couple of reasons. One being they just introduced not this most recent update, but the previous one, the Sakurajima update. They introduced IV glasses. So it's an item that you can go find the materials for, get out of your tech tree, put them on, and you can now just look and see the IVs of every PAL as you wander the land.
Right.
So that can help you target, okay, hey, this one has a 96 in health. I want that. This one has a 100 in defense. I want that. You can target the ones with the high IV stats. And when you breed, there is a random chance. I know there is probably a calculated number. I don't know it off the top of my head. Just kind of like the shiny number, right? There's a calculated number for how many you should get it within, or the number of chances or whatever. But I don't know that number off the top of my head for Palworld.
Right.
There's a chance that your IVs will be inherited by the child. However, just like in Pokemon, it is not a guarantee. It is not something that will happen every time. So if you have perfect hundreds on this PAL, perfect hundreds on this PAL, breed them together, the baby PAL is not guaranteed to have perfect hundreds. It is a very high likelihood, but it's not a guarantee.
Right.
So breeding PALs with perfect stats, or perfect IVs, I should say, is the best way to go about getting your specific ones you want, especially because every PAL can breed with some other PAL.
Right.
To some extent. There are those ones that can only breed with themselves. But to some extent, every PAL can be found or bred to some degree. So IVs inherently, they do the same thing, I think, across both games. There's fewer of them to target in Palworld. And I think that can also play a little bit into targeting, right? So like in Pokemon, I know that if you're trying to get a competitive team, you don't necessarily want perfect IVs for all your stats. It helps. It's great.
Yep.
But if you're like, say you have a tournament next month and you got to breed your Pokemon for it, you might want to be like, okay, I'm going to build my team to have the perfect values that each individual Pokemon has for its role.
And there's also like a factor of RNG that has to be accounted for.
Mhm.
You're not gonna. You might get lucky and get the perfect, stat package that you're looking for. But if you're at something that resembles close enough, roll with it.
Yeah. So IV distribution, I believe, I know the numbers are different. I believe it's fairly similar. It's just a random shot.
Right.
If you get lucky, you get the good thing. You have a chance to breed it down into something that's even better, and that's just kind of how IVs work.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the differences in combat, right? Because in
Okay. Yep.
Pokemon, we have turn-based combat, whereas in Palworld, there's live combat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a pretty big distinction.
Absolutely.
Um, in in my experience playing Pokemon, I have always been the type of person to just power level and then plow through everything with attacks. I
Mm-hmm.
use no defensive attacks. I use no stat changing attacks at all. I just power through with the most powerful thing I got.
Yep.
So, could you give us a little bit more of a finer detail print on how combat in Pokemon should work, beings it is turn based, and how you
Yep.
personally would prepare your move sets and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, first off and foremost, this is going to depend on the individual that's playing because your perspective is your reality. So, what I mean by that is, Irrelevant as an example, you mentioned like you're just good with power leveling and just beating the fuck out of everything and getting through. Chances are you're probably playing the story, and the story is intended to keep somebody playing. It's not intended to be super difficult. Otherwise, nobody would play, right?
Yeah.
However, you go from that setting to playing online. To the folks that play in Japan that are very knowledgeable, it is a night and day difference, and you will need to know your counters. You will need to know your defensive stuff. You will need to know the ins and outs of the abilities of what Pokemon, and not just their abilities, but their hidden abilities and what that does for the Pokemon as well. So, in terms of depth of mechanics, it's entirely dependent on the experience you're looking for. It is perfectly acceptable to go through just the story mode, be overpowered, and beat the crap out of the NPCs and your friends, because chances are they're probably not nearly as knowledgeable, um, and maybe a little bit arrogant to what you could do. So, my favorite defensive Pokemon that is just an absolute wall that drives everybody insane because they don't know how to defeat it is Shuckle. And I mean that quite sincerely because
I know.
he can heal himself. He can give himself more of a defense stat package, and he can also inflict a status onto the opposing Pokemon that's attempting to fight him. So he can chip away at you and take 200 turns and be perfectly healthy the whole time while you lose a little bit each time. You're using up all of your items, and just all he does is delay and frustrate the end user that's trying to take him down. And that's what he's intended to do. But there's nothing wrong with going in with a Dragonite that's just fucking balls to the walls, ready to go and just destroy everything, right? So I think that's probably the most short analogy that I could give in order to answer that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the turn versus live combat situation, this is just my opinion, but in Pokemon, you're playing chess. You're not playing reactionary based combat.
Mhm.
You're trying to think ahead. So I'm going to bring it to a competitive setting where your turn matters. And we could compare that feeling to something like Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate 3. A lot of this stuff that is turn based has a little bit of an RNG aspect to it that you have to account for. And it's a very intense chess match, is what it is.
Mhm.
Whereas in Palworld, and again, my exposure is probably not the same of that of Araluen, but I think it's a lot more preparation and reactionary based than it is thinking ahead.
I would agree with that. I think it's a little bit more. I think honestly, turn based and live combat, the the difference is self explanatory.
Hmm.
You know, to what you just explained, right? You have to, with a turn based system, every single turn matters. You have your prep, you have your pre planning, but once you get in that situation, all plans go out the window based on your situation.
Well, the famous quote from Mike Tyson: "Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face." Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, watched, I don't know if it was Twitch at the time or if it was YouTube, but I have watched videos of people playing competitive Pokemon. They lead in, and they're like, all right, this is my lead Pokemon. He's going to tank the first three for my opponent because he's got this really great defense stat and a high health pool. And then they throw out their first Pokemon, completely stomps it, and it's like, now what?
Well, yeah, and like to maybe draw a parallel to Marvel Rivals, because I know that Native Raider is going to be listening to this, and he loves Marvel Rivals. You got your DPS, you got your tank, you got your healer. You play those same roles in Pokemon in that turn-based chess match, but you have to determine at what. I mean, your opponent could withdraw the problem that you had been dealing with that you're so confident you're going to trump, and then they're going to throw it a different problem. This guy's going to be a wall. This guy's going to be a DPS. And he's also, think about type matchups. If you have an ice Pokemon out there and all of a sudden you go from dealing with a grass type to a water type, or sorry, a fire type, that fire type is a threat to your ice type because it does double damage,
Mm-hmm.
which completely throws off your entire game plan. So again, the type matchups and the statuses, status effects like poison and burn, those are all things that you have to be prepared for. Paralyze, what does paralyze do? Well, it cuts your speed in half automatically, and then you have a 50-50 chance of not being able to move or participate in a turn, which in a competitive setting, that's detrimental.
Yeah.
So it's quite literally a chess match. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. And I think with Power World, the combat, it is a lot more preparatory and reactionary in the sense of, say I'm going to go fight the first tower boss, Zoe Rain. and her Grizzbolt. I know she has an electric type PAL. Ground type PALs are stronger. They're very
Mhm.
effective on electric type PALs. So I will personally go and I'll grab an Anubis who gives ground type damage to myself and then also deals ground type damage. But I will look at those moves that he has because some of his moves are neutral type. And I will move them around to be like, hey, this neutral type move deals a lot of damage all on its own, and it doesn't really need the bonus damage. It would be nice, but it doesn't need it. So I'm going to use this neutral move, and then I need this ground type move that's going to be used a lot, right? Like this move
Right.
has a low cooldown, so it's going to be used and spammed a little bit. Like cool, that's going to be my main source of damage, and so it's a lot of preparation leading into it. And
Mhm.
if you don't know what you're going up against, it is a way more in depth because you have to have a different PAL for multiple different reactions that you could have to make based on what happens when you go. I think at this point, a lot of the bosses and like the big fights you have to deal with are out there enough that if you really wanted to, in my opinion, break the experience to go for the win, because I think that playing through the game and not knowing is part of the experience. But if you just want to break that experience and go for the win, you can find that information.
Mhm.
So you never have to actually go in blind.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And the
Yeah.
cool thing too about Palworld, like we've discussed, there are definitely parallels. Pals have an ability, you know, and that's going to influence how they behave in a certain situation. And there are definitely parallels that can be drawn between the two, but they are different games and they are different experiences.
Hmm.
But they do lend to each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So with Pokemon, we're gonna move into breeding, and specifically, so we already talked about IVs, EVs, and how that can be established through breeding. One of the big things that breeding is used for in Pokemon versus Palworld, Pokemon uses it for shinies. A lot of people use the breeding system for shinies, and in Palworld, it's used to pass down the the uh, the work suitability, or not
Hmm.
work suitabilities. I apologize. The passive skills.
Hmm.
So I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit
Yes,
because I
please
think
start
it is
because I have a lot to talk about when it comes to Pokemon.
okay.
So you start with this.
Okay, so with Palworld, your pals will have a random roll of passive stats and abilities that they will get on the point of capture. So when you are fighting the pal out in the wild, it does not have those passives until after you capture it, with the handful of exceptions that are visible on your screen. So a legendary pal will come with legendary. A lucky pal will come with lucky. And then there's a handful of other things like Lavender comes with a specific one. I can't remember what it is right now. I want to say it's abnormal. Yeah, I think that's right. Lavender comes with abnormal. Dig Toys comes with hard or burly body. No, not burly body. It's another thing like burly body. It's a defense booster. Hard skin. That's what it is. Um, everybody's favorite. Why did I space on the name right when I led into that? Depresso. Everybody's favorite Depresso comes with a specific ability. Kativa always comes with Coward. Things like that. There are some that you can have pre knowledge for that are going to come with a specific passive, but for the most part, it's random roll. Where breeding comes into play, you have a chance. I believe we discussed this in the Power World Discord recently. You have a chance, I believe it's 50-50, to get one of each of every of the passive skills. So it's not 100%. So even if you have two pals, male, female, they have the exact same passive abilities and they're going to give you the exact pal you want, and you want that pal with those abilities, you're not going to get it every single time. But because you have all four, the chances of each one run twice. So it makes it a lot better as far as predictability and likelihood of receiving the stats that you are after. Um, but that is what it is. That is the main point and why breeding your pals is important. Now, I'm going to hand the floor over to Sweaty because I'm probably going to be silent for a while at this point.
Strap up, folks. There's a lot here to unpack. I'm going to break this down into two sections. The first section is going to address just the basic mechanics of breeding in general. And after we kind of develop a foundation of understanding in that aspect, we're going to talk about the Masuda method and why that's important in terms or in relation to shiny hunting. But before we do talk about the manipulation of breeding mechanics in order to produce a shiny, let's just talk about the basics of breeding to begin with. So, as aforementioned, egg breeding is a key mechanic in the Pokemon games, allowing players to produce new Pokemon by having two compatible Pokemon breed with one another. Uh, this process not only allows the end user to obtain Pokemon with desired moves, such as egg moves, and characteristics, but also plays a significant role in acquiring Pokemon with high individual values and shiny variants. So, basic requirements for breeding. To breed, you need two Pokemon of opposite genders, male and female, although some Pokemon, such as Ditto, can breed with almost any other Pokemon except for a few exceptions like legendary and mythical. So, we're talking like Mew, Mewtwo, Celebi. Those Pokemon can't be bred. Now, there's such a thing called egg group compatibility. The Pokemon must be from the same egg group or be a Ditto, and another Pokemon from any species. Different Pokemon species belong to different egg groups. So, as an example, the Field group, Water 1 group versus Water 2 groups. And yeah. So, okay, now that we've kind of have that under our belts, let's talk about the role of a Ditto, which is special because, like we mentioned earlier, it can breed with just about anything. Uh, it's most commonly used in breeding to help create specific Pokemon without requiring two of the same species. So, if you're having a hard time finding a female to breed with your male, a Ditto would be an acceptable alternative. The breeding process. So, to breed, you place two compatible Pokemon in the daycare center or nursery. Um, two Pokemon will occasionally produce an egg, which that mechanic, by the way, is based on the amount of steps you take, not an allotted amount of time. So you leave your two Pokemon at a daycare center. You can hop on your bicycle, do circles in front of the daycare, and then you can just go back and boom, there's a new egg to pick up. The egg will hatch after a certain number of steps, depending on the Pokemon species inside. The distance needed for an egg to hatch is usually between, ready, 2,000 and 10,000 steps. Now, we talked about Pokemon having certain abilities earlier. Magmor, as an example, or Fletchling. They can produce an ability called, what's it called?
Heated body.
Flame Body.
Flame body. Flame body.
Now, why is Flame Body matter? Well, you have it as the leader of your party. You have 5 eggs that you're holding on to, and it will cut those steps in half, which effectively cuts the amount of time you're spending in half in order to hatch said eggs. So hatching the egg. Once the egg's in your party, you can walk around in the game to, quote, incubate, unquote, it. After a set number of steps, the Pokemon will hatch, and there's an opportunity for egg moves, which can be passed down from parents to the offspring, allowing the offspring to potentially learn moves that it otherwise would not usually be able to through leveling up, which is very interesting, especially when it comes to breeding your personally tailored for you starter Pokemon, which is what a lot of people do. We already talked about IV inheritance and how that's related. For shinies, breeding is one of the most common methods to obtain a shiny Pokemon. Now, the odds of a shiny Pokemon differ depending on the title, but in more recent generations, it's typically understood to be 1 in 4,096 eggs in recent games. You have that same RNG factor when you start a new game and you're picking your starter Pokemon for the first time. Now, of course, the length of time that it takes to do this will differ because chances are you save just before you select your Pokemon. You may have to go through a cutscene. You may be forced into a battle afterwards, and then till the battle happens, you can't check that Pokemon. So the allotted amount of time may differ, and you just simply do something that's called a soft reset. So you save before you select. You don't get the one you want, you turn the game off, turn it back on, and then you start the process all over again. Now, there are different mechanics to make those chances better. So I had referenced the Masuda method earlier, which we'll get into greater detail after this explanation. But if two Pokemon from a different language region, so an English Pokemon with a Japanese Pokemon, typically a Japanese Ditto as an example, when they breed, the chances of a shiny Pokemon hatching increase to 1 in 1,365. Much better than 4,000. Now, we discussed egg moves earlier, so let's talk about nature and ability inheritance. The nature of a Pokemon, which affects its stat growth, can be influenced by the parents. If one parent holds, here's one of the mechanics, an Everstone, the offspring will inherit not only the parent's nature, but the Pokeball that you caught that parent with. So if you caught, let's say, a Magikarp in a fancy Pokeball, the offspring will receive that Pokeball, which is really cool. It's particularly useful for players who want a specific nature, coming back to the main topic, for optimal stat growth and competitive play. Now, the ability of the offspring is typically inherited from one of the parents. Some Pokemon, however, have special abilities, or the hidden ability that I referenced earlier. Now, hidden abilities can be inherited if one of the parents has the ability, or through the ability capsule item in some cases. We talked about Masuda method. We're going to get into that in a minute, and breeding mechanics in different generations. I don't think there's really any need to go through that. You can search that up in your own time if you're playing a particular title. A quick example: Generation 2, Gold, Silver, Pokemon Crystal. The mechanics in that game are going to be far different than something, say, from Generation, I want to say it's 7, Sword and Shield, where it introduces nurseries and hyper training. So if you need nuanced information, search it up relative to your game that you're playing. You can breed for competitive play. So it allows players to obtain the best stats also for EV, or effort value training processes, ensuring that their Pokemon can be optimized for competitive combat in the analogy or scenario that I mentioned earlier, where I was competing against folks from Japan as an example. So that's just the bare bone mechanics of breeding. Aralwin, that was a lot of information to digest. How are you feeling at this point?
I actually knew most of that, and I'm kind of surprised.
Was there anything new that I introduced just in that aspect alone that you found surprising, or just new to you?
Processing.
Yep. Don't worry, folks. He's buffering. Coderson, you're no longer alone.
The thing that I think that I didn't fully understand until the explanation was the steps.
Copy.
So I knew about Flame Body. I knew that you wanted it because it would shorten your time, but I did not know that it was a set number between 2 and 10,000, and
Right.
I did not know that it made it another set number between 1 and 5,000.
Right. So Masuda method that I referenced earlier is going to be a technique that influences those values and can often shorten the length of time that you spend in order to produce a shiny. So here's how the Masuda method works. The method involves breeding two Pokemon from a different language of game. Specifically, you need one Pokemon from a game set in one language, such as English, and another Pokemon from a game set that's a different language, in this example that I mentioned before, Japanese. The key difference is that the Pokemon must have different language origins, and that is really the sum of its parts. But that's not very descriptive, Sweaty. I mean, sure, you've given us a general idea, but like, what does that mean? Normally, the chances of encountering a shiny Pokemon, as we discussed earlier, are in 1 in 4,096 in recent generations. While you're using the Masuda method, it boosts the odds of hatching a shiny Pokemon from an egg to 1 in 1,365, which can further be increased with the use of a shiny charm. A shiny charm is an item that you acquire once you've completed your regional, not global, but your regional Pokédex. What does that mean, Sweaty? Well, we talked about different generations of Pokemon. We'll start with Kanto being the very first. That's our red, blue, Pokemon Yellow with Pikachu. And then we go on to second generation, Gold, Silver, Crystal. But each of those games have their own region. So first generation, Kanto. Second generation, Johto. Second generation's best one, by the way, because you get both Johto and Kanto in one game. Hell yeah, they've never done it since.
Big mistake. I thought they should have done that again.
Absolutely. So an example of using the Masuda method, a player has an English language Pokemon, let's say a Charmander. The player then breeds it with a Japanese language Charmander or any other Pokemon from the Japanese version of the game. And after hatching an egg from this combination, the player has an increased chance resulting in the Pokemon being shiny. That's pretty much the Masuda method in a nutshell. Like I mentioned, there are different mechanics and ways to influence the odds of which you produce a shiny, such as a shiny charm. But it's not completely dependent of you having a shiny charm. It's just that it boosts those odds in general. But focus on your regional Pokedex, and then you get your shiny charm and you can go haywire, have fun with it. Now, I will say, for those that want to try this for their first time, have never done it before, Charmander is a very good example. Why? Well, we all know that the end evolution is Charizard. When we say Charizard, we typically think of an orange dragon breathing fire. What if I told you, there, listener, that your Charizard could be black in color with red inside the wings? It's a pretty attractive thought. Now, a shiny Pokemon does not have any particular special stat value, although that can be influenced through the breeding process, and you can tailor your offspring to your likings, such as egg moves, like we talked about earlier. But in terms of what a shiny is and what it means, it's simply just a cosmetic with a really low chance of getting, which is what makes it such an attractive process. Because you spend a lot of time, chances are against you, and then once it pops up, it's usually an extremely high dosage of dopamine, and that process becomes very addicting. But
And you can
yeah,
also make that process even harder for specific Pokemon. So one of the ones I'm thinking of is Salazzle. And
yep.
what is Salazzle's
Well,
evolved
the
form?
thing with Salazzle is you have a significantly lower chance in encountering a female.
Yeah.
There are specific mechanics in place that more times than not, you're going to come across a male, which is RNG on top of RNG, right? So again,
Mhm.
lending itself to an extension of time that you invest into producing said shiny.
Yeah. And that one in particular for me, I've watched people try it and I'm like, I don't think I would have the patience because you do the Masuda method, you have your shiny charm, your odds are down to like, I don't know, under 1,000,
Right.
right? Still a high number, right? Because that's 1,000. It's that value per egg. It's not, oh, I've done this many eggs. Why did I not get it? It's because it's that value per each individual egg that you did.
And in terms of processes, like some folks, they'll just take their 5 eggs from the nursery and then they'll do the circle. Me,
Yeah.
what I like to do is I'll start with the 5 eggs and then I'll hatch them. And the reason I do that, and I keep them in my party, and then I'll go to my PC in the game, go to an empty box, and I will just keep collecting eggs until I fill up maybe 4 to 5 straight boxes in the PC. So what does a box mean? Well, one box is a storage unit, and one box can hold up to 30 Pokemon or eggs. So I'm really bad at math. I'm gonna bring up a calculator right quick. So let's say 30 times, what did we say, 5? So that's gonna be 150 eggs. Um, and that egg count that you have is going to increase your odds. Now, I don't like having eggs sit around in my boxes taking up room, so I will hatch every single one of them. And sometimes, when I get really lucky, I'll get more than one shiny from that
Mhm.
process. Now, other people, what they like to do is just get their 5, hatch them, release them as they go. That's fine in terms of box management, because at the end of my process, you do have to go in and individually select every single one and release them. There's no batch release, there's no mass release, and that's intended so that way you don't accidentally remove Pokemon that you otherwise would not have wanted to. So it's a safety feature.
The only alternate to that is Arceus, because there is a mass releasing feature in Arceus.
Yes, and that's where it gets a little bit different in the most recent generations of Pokemon games. Honestly, the Arceus game, I liked it, but I don't know, it just didn't scratch my itch for me for some
It
reason.
wasn't the same.
Now, yeah, it definitely wasn't. I was not enthralled with it as much as I thought that I would be, because it was that fantasy. When you grow up as a Pokemon fan, like that's the game that you dreamed of. But I just personally feel like they missed the mark. Now, I just got Pokemon Violet, and it's akin to Arceus, but it's not the same. So I'm looking forward to seeing the nuances between the two and how they differ. If maybe they hit a little bit closer to the mark with this newest Violet and Scarlet generation of games. But that is yet to be seen, and I don't have an opinion on it just yet. But yeah, hold on, folks. Hang in there. Ralawin was summoned for a moment. It's okay. You and I are going to hang out. You, the listener, the best listener on the face of the earth. Why? Well, because you could spend your time anywheres right now, but you know what? You're spending it with me. And don't at me, but you're probably going to be scarred. And I'm taking ownership of that. That's my fault, 100%. And I'm going to take some pride in that. That's what I'm here for. That's what I do. The debauchery unfolds. It unleashes, takes a hold of you, takes control of you. All right, roll for initiative. Where's my D20? God damn it, Sweaty. Why are you doing this? This is fucking Astronaut Arcade podcast. You're taking it over with your debauchery bullshit. Roll for initiative. I got a 3. Yep, that means I lost and you are the winner there, listener. Stay tuned for more debauchery to come. In other words, it's just a roundabout way of saying I've run out of things to bullshit about. And I'm just going to wait for Irrelevant to come back. Yeah. I've been drinking these NA beers lately, non-alcohol beers, Budweiser. Oh, but you're Canadian, Sweaty. What are you doing drinking an American product? Listen, I'll spend my hard-earned money where I please, and nobody's going to guilt me into otherwise. That's just the way it goes. If I want to buy Budweiser, you're goddamn right I'm going to buy Budweiser. If I want to buy Miller Lite, I'm going to fucking buy Miller Lite. It's just the way she goes. Fucking at me. Jesus. I will say, though, I feel guilty even talking about the topic and understanding what we discussed earlier with Dizzy. So I've been trying not to mention it a whole lot. So in that case, I'm just going to shove my own foot in my own mouth and tell myself, shut up, Sweaty. I love you, Dizzy. I genuinely hope you're doing okay. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you need somebody. For sure, dude. Andromeda, I hope I hope you're not judging me too much. I haven't had an opportunity to have real in-depth conversation with you yet, so I'm looking forward to that. I know it'll come. You'll have to add me in the feedback, though, because okay, so here's a little confession time with Sweaty. Since Ralawin has irresponsibly left me on a hot mic for your listening pleasure. So at one point in time, oh, you all right there, Ralawin? Sounded like you took a dip, sir. Might be a cat, who knows? Whenever I started my content creation journey, I was a part of a lot of Discords. A lot of them. I'd always have 99 plus notifications, and it didn't matter how much I went through them. So I just had to leave a lot of Discords. So if you're out there and I've left the Discord, don't take it personally. That's what it is. It's no more than that. The folks that need to get a hold of me typically know how to get a hold of me. And I needed to clean up the house a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So don't take it personally. That's just the way she goes. It's all water under the fridge. It's not rocket appliances.
I sat down right when you got to confessional, and I was like, "Oh, I want to hear this. Hang on, I'm going to pretend I'm not here." And I smacked my controller, and I was like, "Okay, if I don't say anything else and I mute, he's just going to think that something happened around the mic."
That's awesome. Hell yeah.
Sorry,
How'd
guys.
I do? Did I do okay filling in the space?
I'm sure. I don't know. I wasn't here.
Yeah, that's right.
I was only here for confessional. Sorry, guys. I had to step away for a moment. My son came in and he doesn't understand. Hey, podcast time. We don't interrupt podcast time. And sometimes
How
it's
dare you be
cool.
a
Sometimes
responsible
he walks
father?
in. Well, and see, sometimes it's cool and it's just like he says hi to everybody and he walks away. Sometimes he's soaking wet and naked and I have to turn off my camera to deal with it.
I fucking love
So
kids,
that
dude.
was that was one of those moments.
Hell yeah. Can we get a W in chat for the kids? Hell yeah. Let's do it. Wait, this is an audio experience.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, that would be
So,
cool.
just to
That'd
catch
be
you back
cool.
up, Rolowin, we've talked about IVs and EVs and the distribution, what it means, turn-based combat versus live combat. We talked about the breeding ins and outs and the different methods, and how it all translates to the game and the parallels between the two. So, let me ask you, Mr. Rolowin, when it comes to exploring the world of Palworld, why don't you lend your experience to that topic?
There are multiple ways to explore Palworld.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, as of yet, there are no vehicles of any kind that you can use to traverse Palworld.
But
But there is things planned based on what the devs have said for there to be vehicles in the future.
well, plus you
So,
can also hop onto a pal and fly too, right?
I mean,
Like
yeah, but
Jetragon.
like, wouldn't it be cool to like be flying a fighter plane with your Sparket in the back, holding his hands over a generator?
Oh hell yeah! If I had my own fantasy, I would totally have like a shoulder turret, kind of like Predator, riding a dirt bike with a gun in hand, ready to go.
Well, and who's your backpack pal to power your vehicle?
My nuts. Oh wait, sorry. uh,
You may have okay, that may be the nickname that you gave that pal, but that's not what the actual pal's name is. What is the actual pal's name?
That's a good question because I'm not familiar with that Dex anymore.
Well,
There's a little
it's
bit
not
of
a
imposter
Dex.
syndrome.
It's not a deck anymore.
You see? You see?
It's a
That
pedia.
there's imposter syndrome here a little bit, which is why I shy from the topic of Pal World because, well, I have imposter syndrome, okay?
Yes, yes, yes. Aware. I am aware.
I love you,
Anywho.
Native. Please don't hurt me.
Anywho, you can also traverse the old-fashioned way with a good old walk. You can run around the map. You can also traverse by riding on the back of a POW or flying on the back of a POW. You can, and depending on your personal preferences, you can also traverse by gliding a lot of places. There are gliders that you can make in the game. That's like an old style, got two
Oh,
handles.
a glider. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
like Zelda Breath of the Wild.
yeah. That's a good description.
Mhm.
So there are those you can make, but there are also POWs that do gliding, and they do different things when you glide. There's one that called Hang You, ironically, that shoots you up real high when you glide.
One might think that you kind of, he hangs you. Shut
Yeah,
up,
you
sweaty.
would think. Um, you also have one that goes farther distance in Gale Claw.
Right.
So in the traversal, and I do think that the games have gotten a lot closer to having very similar lines of traversal more recently. But in traversal, in Palworld, you experience the game differently based on how you choose to traverse it. Right. So
Right.
when the Sakurajima update came out, Native and a bunch of other community members decided they were just going to fly the circle of the map and then, get all the fog of war off of it so they could see the map. And that's what they decided to do. I chose to walk through the island because I could tell it wasn't huge. If I needed to, I would hop on the back of a riding pal to escape. But for the most part, to explore, I walked the island. My experience versus theirs was much longer, and it was a lot different and a lot more of an experience because what they did is they unlocked the whole map. They got to see the whole island very quickly. I got to walk through the island. So when I got to the graveyard on the island, I got to meander my way through these dark trees, and I just so happened to hit it at night the first time I hit it. And so I see these ghostly pals popping up, and it was just a really cool experience to just traverse the island on foot. Now, there's nothing wrong with flying overhead and unlocking the whole island so you know exactly where you want to go. Nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with hopping on the back of a ground mount pal and running through to traverse space. There's nothing wrong with either of those things. And there's nothing wrong with walking either. There's nothing wrong with any way of choosing to traverse. It is just a different way of traversing.
Mhm.
Flying is probably the most common, especially when you hit the end game, just because you want to get from point A to point B as fast as possible so you can complete what you're trying to complete and move forward.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Now, traversal in Pokemon Current, in the game that you just got, is something.
Very
Uh,
different than what I'm used to. Very
yes,
different.
yes. So let's talk about what you're used to in the older style games.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've done research or if you've actually played enough of the game to see the different traversals or how it functions or anything like that. But then we'll talk about the current game
So
afterwards.
far, like, I'm not too far into it just yet, but what I have done is I don't even know the name of the guy, but, like, the the Pokemon that's on the front cover of Violet, I have him, and
Maridon.
I can fly, it seems, to a Pokemon Center, but I haven't, like, actually rode him yet, I guess, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
so, yeah, in terms of the most recent title, that has yet to be discovered. Um, but traditionally, what I'm used to is you have a slave Pokemon, a slave to HMs, which is an abbreviation for hidden moves. The reason we call them slave Pokemon is because, well, they can't be untaught. Um, you can't just remove an HM move unless you visit a particular person that is intended to remove moves. But until you find that person, that Pokemon is stuck with that HM or the hidden move that you taught to it. An example of this: fly, flash, cut, surf. These are all examples of hidden machines or hidden moves. Not hidden moves, sorry, hidden machines. That's what I'm looking for. Um, that they get stuck with. So that's how waterfall as an example, but that's how you would traverse the environment in order to move a boulder using strength, go up a waterfall in order to reach the Elite Four and the end game, stuff like that. So yeah, that's how I'm typically used to it. Um, before the most recent title, you would have a list of Pokemon that you used to encounter that wouldn't affect your party Pokemon. So that way you could maximize what your move sets and it didn't take up a slot unnecessarily. So you could ride a Tauros on for your land base, or you could fly a Charizard to go to the Pokemon Center. So, yeah, it's just kind of how I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to spoil anything if you don't want to be spoiled for your experience on how the current game functions.
I have an idea. I've talked about it before, and I don't really give a shit about spoilers. So send it.
Okay. So in the current game, you have this Pokemon that is on the cover that you get at the start of the game, which is very different from every other game because usually the Pokemon on the cover is the legendary that you get at the end of the story, or towards the end of the story, I should say. And the way this current game works, the Pokemon that you have is all of those hidden machine type moves in one. So you unlock it in my opinion, a mildly unhinged kind of way by feeding it sandwiches. That's how you unlock its abilities and move it forward. And you progress to being able to ride it on the ground, to being able to use it to climb walls, to riding it on water, short distance gliding or long distance based on how high up you are. But the the new way that Pokemon movement is a lot more akin, in my opinion, to what the Power World movement is like, because you just hop on its back and you make it do the things, right? It's a whole different control set that you have to learn and integrate into your personal memory banks and to use. And yeah, so that's the main difference now compared to what Sweaty is used to with the older style. Well, I think that about wraps up what I wanted the main topic to be. It's a friendly comparison, not the opposing opposite sides of lawsuit and, stealing and being stolen from that has been more the commonplace pretty much since Power World has come out.
Well, to be fair, that type of a narrative comes from folks who don't respect that. How do I say this respectfully? People who just can't respect other people enjoying a different game than their
Yeah.
team. It comes from a primal tribal mentality that has been around since humans have been a thing. You know, my team or you're the enemy. And it's my personal opinion that's not right. And
Yeah.
you need to allow people to like what they like and fuck off.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Well, let's go ahead and round out the show with the last quarter, eighth of content that we usually provide you guys.
Send it.
Anywho, stop me if anything catches your attention in this news and updates. I don't know if you had a chance to look through it or not.
Yeah, I read through it pretty quick. Go ahead.
Cool. So, Marvel Rivals is in the second half of Season 1, currently dubbed as Season 1.5. They have new heroes, the Thing and the Human Torch, and they have a new map, Central Park, with apparently a hidden zone. Gotta go figure out what that's all about. Palworld just put out a thing very recently that at their 1 year mark, they have 32 million players. You know, for a game, I'm pretty sure I remember, Sweaty, you might have been the one that said this, that very early on, the creator never expected it to break like 30,000. Like if he broke 30,000, he would be happy. And he got to 32 million in just a year. That's intense.
Absolutely.
Elden Ring Night Rain launches May 30th. For those of you who like Elden Ring, I didn't know there was a new DLC, but hey, there you go. Tides of Annihilation is a new PS5 game. If you want more details on this, there are links in our gaming news channel to the articles on all these different games. Dreams of Another is a new PS5 and PlayStation VR 2 game. Pretty cool. Days Gone Remaster for PS5 is coming out, has been announced. Lost Soul Aside launches on PS5 and PC May 30th. That looked kind of interesting. I was a little bit interested by that one. I'm not entirely sure what it's about, but I'm definitely going to watch some of it. Karma, The Dark World, out on PS5 March 27th.
I love that you're the PlayStation guy. Because I've got some announcements to add to this. That's the Xbox side. So please.
Hey, there we go.
Is that everything for PlayStation?
Yes, that was everything that we had that we saw.
All right. PlayStation Network, get your shit together. You're interfering with people's Destiny experience on day one. For fuck's sakes. How many times you guys need to have a breach? All right, now that I'm done roasting Aralawin secretly, you know. Xbox side. Cool. So there's this new game that just released on Xbox Game Pass that I'm fucking super enthralled into. And it's called Avowed. If you like RPG games, this is the game for you. Definitely check it out. Also, things to keep an eye out for. There's going to be a brand new entry into the franchise of Fable, the game, which will be released later this year. As well, something that has released to check out and is worth your time checking out. I have played it. I love it. If you're a fan of the Ninja Gaiden franchise, there has been a remake of number 2 called Ninja Gaiden Black 2. And basically what they do is they give it new textures and new cosmetic makeup to reflect more modern technology. And to add to that, they're also adding a brand new entry into the Ninja Gaiden titles as well. I believe this is going to be number 4. Now, one thing that Aralawin did not mention, which is going to be a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and I'm super upsetty spaghetti about it because I don't have PlayStation products and I can't afford to go out and buy it just for one title. It's not justifiable, but I'm so fucking tempted to for this one game. It has officially been announced that they're going to make Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic once again in a full modernized remake for PlayStation. Another reason that I'm going to respectfully say, fuck you, PlayStation. And with that, the last bit of news, not specifically related to any particular platform, but something to keep an eye out for. A website to look up to get more information, another Star Wars title, not by EA. It's called Star Wars Eclipse. And the trailer, Aralawin. Oh my God. I get a boner every time I think about it. The only thing that's really available on it is just the visual bits. They're still working on the game. There is no release date yet. This is like extremely early for this game, but what they have released, I encourage every single one of you, if you're a Star Wars fan, please Google search Star Wars Eclipse and watch the game trailer that they have thus far. I am over the moon excited for whenever we hear more about this title. And that's the end of my updates and slight roasting of PlayStation. I love you, all of my PlayStation players. Don't hurt me. I'm only angry with PlayStation themselves, not you, the end user.
There you go. And I actually don't play PlayStation. It was just the links that we had in our gaming news section.
Yeah, fuck play. Oh, sorry, I'm taking it too far. Andromeda's gonna hurt me later. I know it.
She might.
I don't blame her. Like I
she's gonna
said,
be the one.
it's nothing. It's no disrespect to the end user. You spend your money, your hard-earned money, how you see fit. But for my situation, I can't afford that, and it hurts my heart. It that's the root of my anger.
See, I missed like the first half of the things you said up until you got to Star Wars, because you said Avowed was for RPG fantasy players, and I immediately went to install it.
Yeah, as you should. And for those who do not have an Xbox, but you have a PC out there, as long as you have a graphics card that supports fairly heavy graphic games, Avowed, please get the Game Pass. Try it. Check it out. It is absolutely worth your time if you're an RPG fan. I promise you. It is single player. I will tell you that, Native. I know you're kind of rolling your eyes at me right now, but the story, the lore, the mechanics, the combat, the depth of this game, like, just do yourself a favor and try it, please. Native, not singling anybody out. Native, I swear. Native, Raider, James Zimmerman, your government name. Jesus Christ.
Man, I wish I had a bleep sound. Just bleep over that name. But I'm not gonna leave it.
I can give you one if like I have that.
No, I don't think he cares very much. He just
no, he doesn't.
It's just
we've done it on our own podcast,
like,
which is the only reason I've done that.
Yeah, it's like the common courtesy thing to just refer to everybody as their gamer tag. But I know a lot of our community actually knows each other's names, and like DPS, dudes playing stuff, they make it a thing to be like, hey, these are our names. I am the him.
Dylan.
I am him. Yeah, like they make it part of their whole thing. So like, it's just branching into the more family aspect of sharing names versus people we play with online, so we just know them by their gamer tag.
Exactly. I love you, Dylan. I know you're excited for Avowed, aka Toll the Bell.
Yeah. So we're going to skip questions for the show this week because we are running extremely long.
Sorry, it's my fault. I talk a lot. I'll shut up now. So you can do your job.
Well, look, at least you talk a lot and you say interesting things.
Well, I try, certainly if it's just the two of us, somebody's got to keep the audience engaged somehow. Not saying you're not interesting, because you sure are. Plus, you're a beautiful fucking specimen of man. Oh, if only you could see this guy right now. Jesus, puts me to shame. I'll tell you that. Look at that fucking sexy beard. Happy birthday, bro.
Look me in my eyes.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, cool. Love it. I'm here for it.
Sorry, guys. We just had to have a moment real quick.
Visual bit there for the audio experience,
Yeah. So, Astronaut of the Week. As you guys know, we have our Astronaut of the Week. Lately, our Discord has been mildly quiet, so we have been randomly selecting our Astronaut of the Week out of all of our people, just because I feel everybody deserves to know that we care about you individually, whether you say something in our Discord, an active participant, or not. Mm-hmm. However, that being said, Astronaut of the Week does come with special perks and privileges, as in you can change the hosts' names, and I have been Pop-Tarts for a while now. So, Crappybara, can you please do something about that as our Astronaut of the Week?
Congratulations, Araluan Ranger. From Pop-Tarts, you are now known to be, from this day forward, as Pop Farts. Or Big Papa Farts. Let's do it. Yeah.
No, not going to do it, because you're the only person here and I have power and you don't. Not going to do it.
Yep. Facts. Yep.
God,
I'm a terrible influence.
I know you did not take that personally, but I felt bad when it came out of my mouth.
Don't. I would be offended if you didn't try and roast me in some fashion. That means that we're not close enough yet.
That's true. That is factual. Our streamer of the week is Caliverse. Caliverse is a streamer who I found a while ago who, when Destiny 2 was very big, I believe it was right around Forsaken launch, she started streaming Destiny 2, and that's how I found her. And she's a very good watch. Like, she's actively participating with her chat. She is playing the games and having a good time. I have very rarely seen her do the thing that a lot of male streamers will do, and that's get very aggro very quick for no reason at all. And it makes for a
Hell
more
yeah.
enjoyable experience, in my opinion, because she's just like, oh, well, that sucks. And she'll get
Hell
frustrated,
yeah.
but she doesn't go like, 10% to 100% in one grenade, you know?
hmm
So, and
Shout
I
out
will
to our
say,
female streamers out there. If you're one of those people that grief female streamers, go fuck yourself.
yes, please, with a cactus.
Not kindly.
But we will
Isn't he
have
supposed to be
Caliverse's.
Canadian? Sorry.
Yeah, so kudos to Sweaty for killing Canadian stereotypes daily.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I do. You talking about maple syrup? You mean sticky waffle ketchup?
Jeez, that just made you okay. I cannot let my kid listen to that line of phrasing because it will completely murder syrup for him. He loves syrup, but he hates ketchup.
I hate
He
ketchup too.
hates
Your kid is right. Ketchup is public enemy number one. I will fucking die on that hill. Fuck ketchup.
Well, we will have Caliverse's info in our show description as always, so that you guys can go check her out. She is a good watch. Now, Sweaty,
I just upset so many people. I've been on one this
probably.
week, all right? I've like army in training. I got to get ready with the debauchery. I got to be ready.
Well, this is part of the show that we do all the time. You guys do it on your show. Everybody across all of the shows that we know and love with all of our friends do the same thing. They talk about those social plugs. Based on your catch-up thing, I'm going to say you probably shouldn't expect a whole lot of new followers on your socials, but you should go ahead and give them to us anyways.
At me, bro. You can find me at twitch.tv/SweatySpooks, ending with a Z for all of my American friends out there. That's right. Z, not a Z. God, I'm really fucking on one tonight, aren't I?
You got to gear up for your other podcast that you got to do today.
Yeah. We're yeah. I got to eat something before then too. But if I'm very active on Twitter, you can find me at x.com/sweaty_spooks, ending with a Z. Most commonly, though, if you're trying to get a hold of me, you can email me sweatyspooks@gmail.com. But the easiest place to get a hold of me is the Discord. Now, I had a little confession earlier where I had a problem where I was a part of too many Discords. And that lended itself to my ignoring all of them except the Blueberry Lounge. Don't take it personal. It's just, it's too much for one person to handle. So if you really want to get a hold of me, I'm going to give Aralowin the privilege to share a invite link. You can feel free to join the Discord, and you can at me at the Blueberry Lounge Discord. You can at me here as well in the Astronaut Arcade, but I cannot promise I will see it for the aforementioned issues that I've had earlier. Please forgive me. Don't take it personal. It's nothing personal. Just it's hard for me to keep track of things. So if you're really wanting to get a hold of me, join the Blueberry Lounge podcast Discord. Oh yeah, by the way, I have a podcast. Check it out, the Blueberry Lounge. We're no longer married to any particular franchise. We talk to gamers and we talk about gamer experiences. We talk about any and everything under the sun that is nerd and geek culture and some with a massive sprinkle of debauchery. If you're easily offended, I'm going to tell you quite point blank that we are not the podcast for you. We embrace the debauchery as a means of comedy, and anything that we do and or say comes from a good place with those that are participating. We've known each other for a long time, but we definitely try to tilt each other. Like we make a point to try to tilt each other. And if we've succeeded, it's been a good night. So be warned, but that doesn't mean that we don't have good stuff in there. You know what we opened up this podcast with? There is flavor of that as well, because at the end of the day, we're just people. That's all it is. We're not this big fancy rock star guy that knowledge hoards. Like, as an example, the Astronaut Arcade podcast is a sub product from the Palworld podcast that I helped found with Native, and I taught him everything that I know, and it has been passed down. Something I take great pride in seeing people share their knowledge with each other. So, yeah. Anyways, to come to a complete closure, so I can shut the fuck up and get out of your ears, find me on Discord, Blueberry Lounge Podcast. I'll see you there.
Guardian?
Gamer.
Oh, right. No, it's funny. I did want to bring up this point at some point with either you or one of your other co-hosts over there. After playing Destiny for so long, I refer to the randoms in every other game as blueberries.
Hell yeah, dude. The story
So,
of the
like,
underdog.
So, like, anybody who has, and in my experience, anybody who has played Destiny for a very long time has that same problem. Every person in every other game, regardless of what the color is of their gamer tag or their whatever, is a blueberry if you don't know them and you're not actively talking to them via Discord or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of cool how, because of that cultural trend and phenomena, you don't have to change the name of your podcast, because now you're talking about a whole bunch of games, but it doesn't matter because blueberries are global.
Exactly. And that was kind of my moment of brilliance that I'm it's not, listen folks, it's not often that I toot my own horn or, as we talked about earlier, pat myself in the back, but that was a moment of brilliance that I will absolutely pat myself in the back for and say that that was my moment of brilliance. So, yeah. And like I said, too, like blueberry, it comes from a tiered gear system, starting with white, which is completely useless, to blue, which has some value, to green, which has a little more value, to purple, to gold, and gold, of course, being exotic. So blueberry just kind of meant that you were a bare bones new player who was ultimately not really helping the team, but learning the game. And it comes back to the story of the underdog, back to the roots of skill improvement. Everybody out there has a blueberry, regardless of what team you're on, what game you're playing. So yeah, that's kind of where we come from.
That's never what blueberry meant to me.
Yeah, that's the textbook description origin of where it comes from. The blue gear, essentially, meaning that it's since evolved to what you're saying, but that's how it started. Kind of like how my name Sweaty derives from sweats, which meant private matches. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'm seeing it now. Yeah, because in my mind, a blueberry is because on your mini map, they're blue little dots.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
It's all related. It all comes full circle.
Well, as for me, guys, you know where you can find me. I say it every week, and I'm going to say it again just in case this is your first time listening to the show. And if it is, I apologize for SweatySpooks. He is himself, and everybody loves him. And if you don't, go fuck yourself.
Oh.
Anyways, you can find me right here in the Astronaut Arcade Podcast. And you can also find me in the Astronaut Arcade Podcast Discord. You can find me in the Palworld Podcast and the Palworld Podcast Discord. And you can also find me in the Blueberry Lounge on an episode of the podcast and in that Discord. You can find me scattered across the Owl Sector Alliance, which you can find a lot of through the Blueberry Lounge Discord, and also some of them through this Discord. And you can occasionally find me on Twitch. Sort of. You can tonight. It's going to be too late after this episode comes out. You can tonight on Elmer Fudd's tournament. You guys are going to possibly get to go watch that back because it'll be on my Twitch. So there you go.
Yeah.
That all being said,
fucking stand your guess. What seems to be the matter, Skeletor? Yeah, the Rallowing Ranger has a fucking guest going by the name of SweatySpooks. What kind of a fucking name is that? Well, perhaps he comes from really humblesome beginnings. Who really knows? I don't give a shit. Andromeda's gonna fucking ring this guy from his toenails up to the top of his head because of all the language. And you're any better? Abso-fucking-lutely not. Fuck you, He-Man. I committed to the bit for you.
I need to put a double explicit on this episode. Thank you all for listening to the Astronaut Arcade Podcast. We love you, and this is a place where we take one small step for man and a giant leap for gamerkind. We'll see y'all next time.